Welcome to the 18th Video Community of Practice meeting. I'm Pankaj Agrawal, founder of Next Software Solutions and working group leader of this community of practice. Let's briefly review the 17th meeting. It was a short meeting. We had some technical difficulties in the last meeting. So to sum up, we discussed on the verbs that we decided, verbs and the activity IDs that we decided on the 16th meeting to remove. So we discussed on that, and then we decided that we'll create an extra page on GitHub for the profile. So I just created that page for the profile to describe the xAPI video profile that we have been working on so long. So I've just created a blank page trying to create the structure copying from the other profile. So that's all for the last meeting, and we have pretty much covered the vocabulary. We have to just finish off some of the remaining tasks, like adding some description on some of these, like the red ones. Some of the changes that had to be made, I'll have to check if they are made on the actual profile. Time. Okay, so there are some changes in this published vocabulary that is on vocab.pub. So some of the changes that we had discussed in the last few meetings that needs to be done, I'll talk to Jason, and we'll get those changes done. Apart from that, we have to fill in the description for these 3 or 4 items. If any one of you get some time, maybe you can review this document. The link is in the general docs. I can send you the link for the general doc as well as the vocabulary list that we are building. I just sent it. And this is the page for the profile that I have created. It is just a blank page currently, just trying to put together the things. So there are these few descriptions that we have to add, maybe review and see if something needs to be changed. So if any one of you can go in and review that whenever you get time, we can finalize this. So we have already discussed on all of them, and almost final on the vocabulary that we have. Now the 2 main things required is one is to document all of the vocabulary and the process of sending and receiving the statements, and whatever needs to be done to implement video profile in any code. So that is one thing we have to do, and another thing, if any changes comes in between, we have to take care of those changes, or just make sure that everything is very clear so that anyone implementing the vocabulary doesn't face any problems. So to get things implemented, this document would need to be very clear, and it is one of the most important part that is remaining for this community of practice. Any questions or doubts so far?
This is Ian. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If that's okay. I just want to mention that I'm attending John Coster, who is chair of the IEEE ADB committee, and Republic is his company. We're contractors on the ADL project. So our job is to create an ebook profile that is aspiring to be nearly as good as your video profile. So I need to completely get up to date with where you guys have reached. Is there a section of this document or another document that outlines the scope and the objectives of this exercise?
There is a general information doc which gives most of the information. It is not a published document, and there might be a lot of information which might not be relevant. It was a scratchpad document that was created to put in everything we can think of. So currently this is what we have. Mission objectives, goals, we haven't worked a lot on those. We just jumped on the actual task that was required. So
is it true to say that you've tried to make this sort of as exhaustive as you can, reflecting people's desires and ideas, or have you set a sort of a scope limit on how many things you're going to measure and what they're intended to accomplish?
What we did was we started with an open slate, and we just didn't limit ourselves to anything. But then as we moved ahead, people had their own ideas on what can be done and what they need. So it was an open community where anyone could come in and say that I want this done as part of this community. And based on all those inputs, we have tried to include whatever we could, and whatever that would be part of the scope of video COP. So based on that, we have decided what best we can do, and we have moved ahead and created the vocabulary for video profile. So that is how we went ahead, and the profile can take care of a lot more than what people would need, because xAPI can do a lot more than what video profile does. So you can link statements to any other profile or any other statements, and you can do a lot of things that is part of xAPI. So video, your scope might come under the xAPI and use video profile.
Well, I see that there'd be a lot of parallels between the high-level concepts of, has somebody viewed a video? Have they looked at the relevant parts of it? Have they been able to, ingest enough of it to say that they have viewed it and have engaged with it? These are the same conditions that we would like to examine with people's connection to an ebook. Do you have any part of this documentation that addresses these more high-level concepts of how you could aggregate these measures and make certain inferences from them?
Okay, so one of the things is about what parts of the video a user has consumed, and what he has not, what he liked, or what he didn't like. So some of it is a very integral part of the profile. For example, you can track where the user started viewing the video, where he stopped, where he skipped, and what parts of the videos he consumed. And we have also added a heat map data, where if a user goes through the video again and again, different parts of the video again and again, you get that data as part of the heat map data, and can comparatively easily reconstruct that as a visual that shows what parts of the video was viewed multiple times and what was not viewed at all. So those kind of information can be reconstructed from the data that is stored in the LRS using this profile. Now, coming to the other part of your question, that is relating to other things. For example, if a video is part of an ebook, maybe. So if a page of ebook or maybe a standard, a more advanced kind of ebook has a video. Now this video is related to that page, so you could structure the statements in a way that the activity ID of video is child, or let's say the activity ID of the ebooks page is parent of the activity ID of video. So this kind of structure is part of xAPI, and it's pretty straightforward that it doesn't need much explanation on the profile itself.
This is Anthony. Sorry, I had to reboot for a second there, so I didn't get to jump in a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. As far as the scope, one thing that I would suggest, especially if you're looking at something like ebooks, which is very, that's a very large topic, you really want to get some folks in a room and just gather everything you can possibly think of to track, and then consider limitations. Don't go in with any thought of scope or any limitations, and as you come up with ideas, put them in the list, and then come back to that list and say, all right, well, this is with it, this is in whatever scope we're starting to imagine or not. And so for example, one of the things that we've had numerous discussions on is this is on the video itself. I don't care what happens on the rest of the page. The rest of the page is not a video. That's out of scope. Loading the page that houses the video, that's on the page. That's out of scope. So you really want to go with that approach of gather everything and then look at what scope boundaries make sense to that topic.
Yeah. So this is another way of saying what I was saying. It is part of the larger xAPI boundary. So the video profile talks about the video itself. Now this video can be in a page, it can be inside a comment, it can be inside an ebook, it can be part of different scenarios. So if you want to solve that problem, one way is that you can make that page or make that comment or make that ebook as a parent of this video context. So that thing is explained pretty well in the xAPI spec, and you can have parent, you can have grouping. There are two different things that are generally used. So you can use all those activity IDs of the parent contexts as the parent ID or the grouping ID in your statements.
Okay, I do apologize for coming in at this late stage and asking such fundamental questions, but I appreciate you taking time to answer them. Is there some, this is a very naive question, is there some kind of accompanying metadata structure that you envisage for the video itself so that you can assess whether someone has seen parts that are more relevant than others to the context in which that video appears? I mean, sometimes you want somebody to watch the whole thing and in one session, I guess, and sometimes, from an educational goal perspective, and other times you'd be content for them to revisit on many occasions or perhaps not see the whole thing. How do you address those in the way that you measure things, and does it not actually require some metadata annotation of that content to make that possible?
So what kind of exact information you are looking? I didn't get the.
Well, I think the author or the let's say the activity developer, might look at this video and say, well, there's certain. I'm happy for a learner to watch the whole thing. Otherwise, I would just have a deep link to a section of it. But equally, there's only 4 really important topics that are covered here, and the rest of it is background. So someone with a more type A learning style wouldn't want to be detained by all parts of it. Still, you want to, check if someone has engaged with the most important parts of it. I think you were intending to enable that, weren't you, from what I heard from some other people?
Yeah. So you have the raw data. So currently based on the profile that we have right now, you have 2 kinds of raw data. One is that the statements that you get into the LRS, that is, for example, when a user clicks on play, you get a play statement. When a user clicks on pause, you get a pause statement, and when he moves from one point to another, you get a seek statement. So you have that raw data, and then you have another level of raw data, which is the heat map data. Now, heat map data will be something like, let me get there. Just a second.
Well, you would just build the heat map based on your play, pause, and stop statements, and seek, I suppose.
So you depend on the aggregation of these the data from these statements to make an assessment of whether this viewing experience was meeting your needs. I mean, you can't compute it directly from metadata that might be supplied.
Yeah, so this heat map data will be part of the profile. Just to explain what I'm talking about, if you can, do you see the string of data 0.000 and then
yes
dot? So now each of these parts of data are the parts of video that a user watched. So there are currently 3 parts of the video that user watched. That is from 0.000 seconds to 12 seconds, and then from 14 to 21, and then from 18 to 30. So these are the parts of the video that a user has watched the video, and you can get this data from the statements directly without re-aggregating the data. Now, using all the strings of these data, you can you'll have to re-estimate if your video range is part of what he watched. So let's say if you wanted the user to watch from second 2 to 10, you'll have to see if that is part of what he watched using this string of data. So you don't need to re-aggregate all the statements, but you have to aggregate all the statements that has this required information.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is going to be, you're going to have to know, given videos video A, video B, and video C, you need to know for A, B, and C what are the relevant parts that you're tracking.
Yeah, so my question was, are you attempting any semantic representation of that importance in your scope here, or are you just relying on, the reporting of this to be interpreted at a higher level?
At this point, we haven't. One of the problems is, from a practical standpoint, how do you put that information on the page?
Mm-hmm,
What's the important part? Because you've got, you have to keep in mind that each of the different players have a different syntax on how to control the playback and the different events and things.
Yes.
So, when the person hits play, depending on what player object they're using, you're going to trigger, on dot play or on play or whatever. So each player would have a different way to notate what those important bits are. So it would be very difficult to do that. Not to mention, then that would also extend beyond the scope of xAPI. That would be something doing in the player at a JavaScript or some other layer well ahead of the xAPI.
Yeah. So you as part of the xAPI profile, you get that heat map data, that is this string, and then your reporting software or your LRS will have to do the reporting or visualization of it. So one of the example visualization that was envisioned is this. If you can see this visual, are you able to see the heat map diagram?
Yes, I've got
Yeah.
it.
So this is an example diagram which you can rebuild using the heat map string that I showed you. The string will be comparatively much more longer than what I had shown for this example. So once you visualize the string in this form, it might be easier to interpret which parts of the video was watched more or which was ignored. And if maybe you have a list of this in one page, maybe for 100 users, you might be able to visually correlate, or your reporting software can correlate that data, maybe overlap that data on one another, and give you a better indication for the entire group of users.
Yeah, that is clearer than I had thought. What actually occurred there, isn't it? That's right. I'm sorry, I don't know who was speaking before. Was that Anthony or Michael?
Yeah, Anthony. He was Anthony.
Yes. With regard to your comment about the player and everything, we do have a bit more scope for that within the ebook, because we sort of control the whole environment. We actually, have a page which can accommodate metadata accompanying any object on that page, which is nice. And we're also programming APIs and an outer user interface for the ebook reader. So we do have a lot of scope for doing stuff. What I'm questioning is how far we need to go in that direction here. And I can see that I think for our first phase, we probably don't need that metadata and annotation if we can do a similar thing to what you've done here, and at least report what people did and aggregate it across users and form an impression of how people have engaged with different parts of the content.
I'm trying to go through my notes, and I'm trying to rack my brain, which is a frightening place, to be entirely honest.
Me too.
I know somewhat during one of the cohorts, I think it was during the first cohort, they had someone that kind of cracked a little bit of the ebook nut. But I don't remember.
That would have been Republic in collaboration with the Classroom Aid people out of Texas and Taiwan.
That might have been. Like I said, I can't remember.
Now known as Visual Catch, VisCat.
Okay, I was just going to say, I'd share that info with you just to make sure you're not trying to recreate a wheel they've already worked on.
Well, I was sort of, loosely connected with it at the time, so I'm aware of that. But we've sort of moved up a level of sophistication since then. So we really want to get serious about having a proper recipe. And if I can get an unfair advantage by picking you guys' brains, that will be just great. Because you've done a heck of a lot of work, and you must be the most advanced xAPI recipe builders around, or profile builders around. Is that right? I think you are.
I would assume CMI 5 is much far ahead.
So this is great. Thank you for allowing me to get down to such basic questions.
No problem. Any other questions from anyone?
Well, just one more maybe. I mean, what are your outstanding tasks that you need to do before you can all declare a win and walk away. What other things do you see, that aren't quite there yet?
There are I think two main things. One is to finish this document, some minor changes like adding some description on some of these vocabulary items and removing some of them, moving some of them. So maybe if someone has time, they can help with this. And then the main task that is remaining is to document everything into this GitHub page. Let's see where it is. So I've just created a placeholder for this. So we'll have to complete this document, explain everything, and add everything here so that it is easier to use the video profile. Currently, the general information document has a lot of extra data that is not applicable, or a lot of things repeated multiple times. So it is completely jumbled up, and a new person cannot understand this document very well. So we need to have a very clean document that will be the video profile.
Do you think we'd be able, I mean, obviously our books are going to have videos in them. Do you think we'd be able to pick this up and completely use it and test it in the next few months? I mean,
yeah, if you want to test, you can just get started. If it is for testing, not for production, but yes, in few months, I believe we'll be able to take care of a good part of this document.
Super. All right. Thank you.
Gitbook. So Jason says that we should be using Gitbook. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you don't have to. I've had good experience with it in terms of readability. It has pagination and floating table of contents, so it's much easier to read. And if you set up a webhook with your GitHub repo, if you make an update in the Gitbook editor or on GitHub, it synchronizes between both. So it's just nice to offer an alternative way to read, things that are on GitHub. I really wish the xAPI spec was more readable. It's kind of a nuisance to have to scroll for miles and look for something.
Okay. Do we have some examples here?
The vocab spec and primer documents we published used Gitbook and GitHub.
Do you have the link?
Yeah, I'll put a link in the chat.
Yep.
And it also offers, alternate reading versions besides in the browser. You can download a PDF, you can download EPUB or .mobi files. Well, and the editors are pretty good. It has a markdown editor that's pretty neat.
So we don't need to write the markdown on the GitHub side.
It has an editor that does all the markdown stuff for you.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was really worried how to do all that markdown. So I was trying to copy parts of CMI5 to simplify things.
I'm currently working on updating the SCORM profile to use Gitbook, so because it's getting kind of long too. So you don't have to, of course. There's other things you could do. Just thought I'd throw that out there as something I found to be rather useful.
Mm. According to you, which one is the best API documentation?
I don't know those templates. When I set it up, I already had the GitHub repository.
Okay.
And it just, when you log into your account and you sync your GitHub account, then Gitbook, it'll allow you to import it and automatically imports what you have in GitHub. But you have to structure it a certain way in order for it to use table of contents the way it does. But I can work with you offline too, Pankaj, if you want to, and I'll help. Glad to help with that.
Okay.
If you go to the settings tab at the top is where you can import an existing.
There's an import button.
Up there at the settings, where you see about that settings tab.
Okay.
Go over to the
settings.
There you go. And then if you go down to GitHub, under settings.
Okay.
You can set up sync your repository now. If you refresh that page, refresh that page, I think that message may go away. You have to set up a webhook. That webhook URL, you have to add it. If you click add webhook, and then it'll add it there. I don't know if
this
everybody
one
wants to watch us do that now. Just click the add webhook link.
It says you need to grant permission.
Yeah. Now that you've added, try to refresh that. Give me. Anthony's chat message. Sync. Yeah, kitchen sink your content. But anyhow, yeah, we can work on that offline if you want.
Yeah. Thinking zip. The zip can sink in kitchen sink. So yeah. So what should we just finish this now? These are the two main things we need to get everything in the document. The document in GitHub, and then also complete the vocabulary. So Jason, you'd need to make some of these changes. Maybe you can do all of the changes once we have finished this description.
Yeah. Are we ready, or is
no.
there? Okay.
So we have to just, I think, add description for these three, I guess. Session ID, user agent, and screen size. Let's see what we have. Context extensions.
Another thing I was going to try to circle back around and work on too, I think we talked about via email. I found Anthony, somebody that worked for Anthony, the American Red Cross, had done a demo with the JW player, and it's cross-platform, works with Vimeo, YouTube, I think maybe even HTML5. But
Okay.
I thought that might be a good library to use for a demo with the xAPI profile. So I'm going to try to get back on that this month. Just had other things, other priorities come up, but I did start working with it a little bit.
Yeah, let me know when you want to talk about that. Let's remove the geometric object from that conversation.
Okay.
There's some history there. We'll talk.
Okay.
So which library is it? Is it the JW Player xAPI library or what?
Yeah, JW Player. There's a more recent version. This one that Philip had worked with was from I think a whole another version back, and then also the ADL updated. There's some other updates too, so I was going to try to tackle a couple of those things.
Yeah, that's using, I want to say 6.10, but don't quote me on the version. And I think they're up to 7 or 8 now.
Yeah.
Or maybe even beyond that, I forget. And yeah, it's using the ADL xAPI driver, like version 0.1 or so. I mean, it's using a very, very early version of the driver.
Okay.
Okay.
So this JW Player library, is it only for JW Player or it works with other players?
It's
that's
kind of like it's kind of like jQuery. It's kind of like jQuery. It's a library that works cross players. You know how like jQuery, JavaScript.
Well, JW Player is a framework for handling Flash and HTML5 video. So when we keep talking about the player object, JW Player is a player object.
Yeah, but it does support Vimeo and YouTube as well, though.
Yes,
supports several players out there. So I think of it in that regard, kind of like jQuery, where you use a jQuery JavaScript library and you know your content, whether you're trying to load in XML over HTTP or something or JSON, you can do it consistently using the same syntax from jQuery, and it'll work in any browser. Kind of the same thing here. They have like a library with a bunch of different functions and things you can call.
Okay.
Seems pretty handy rather than trying to, support all these different flavors of players independently.
Yeah. So one other library that I had seen was pretty popular is the Video.js library. I haven't used it, but I found it comparatively popular.
Yeah, there's Video.js, there's JPlayer, there's Popcorn.js.
Yeah, Popcorn.js. We are using Popcorn.js currently, but Popcorn.js is not supported very well currently. Like its library was updated maybe 1 or 2 years back. So any new code, I would not recommend using Popcorn.js because no one is developing that library actively.
Good to know. Yeah, if you guys have any preferences on any of these, I would rather work with what you guys think would be the best one.
Well, I'm obviously partial to JW Player, as is evidenced on the screen. Um, and I mean, and there are a lot of people who use it. However, I think if we're looking at building examples, I would be very hesitant to say, all right, let's do JW Player and be done with it. I think we need to do a couple different, even if it's not all of them, like like that page for Big Buck Bunny, which is an awesome video, by the way. If anybody hasn't seen it, go see it. It's an open source movie. Yay, hippie stuff. But maybe just show, okay, this is play, this is pause, this is stop, abandon, whatever. Just do a couple of the big ones and do those across a couple of the more popular. Because, like I said, one of the things you're going to run into is JW Play. I mean, even JW Player itself has 3 or 4 different ways to talk to the player object.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's other good features too, though, that when I was trying to demo the seek to verb, the seek verb, there's not a way to really do seeking with the YouTube API, but directly from what I could find. But JW Player does allow you to.
Yes.
One thing is
YouTube
that
it was really complicated or something. I can't remember. I have to go back and look.
One more thing we might want to see is the licensing, like.
Well, and that's another reason I would say go across, because JW Player does have a free license, but it's watermarked.
Yeah, watermarked, and if you want to use for commercial sites, you would need to purchase the license. So if we create a demo and if someone wants to use it for their commercial website, they would need to purchase JW Player. So if more open source kind of library is there, we might want to see if that can be a good option.
Yeah, have you guys looked at Video.js extensively, or?
I have not.
I haven't used, but it looks promising. It says used by Microsoft, Dropbox, and Instagram. And there are a lot of the library itself doesn't support any of the players, I guess. Probably it supports only HTML5, but there are extra plugins for each of the video types.
Okay, cool. Well, check that out. Sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack the call. I know you're looking at the vocabulary stuff. I was just popped in my head. I thought I'd mention it since we have everybody on the call today.
Yeah, but I think this is equally or more important than that. It's good that you brought it up. HTML5 video APIs. Okay, so yeah, so the description for session ID. Session ID. What is session ID? So can someone give a good description for it? I've written use to tell which session the statement is part of. A session starts with the initiated statement and ends with terminated or abandoned statement. Let me know if it needs to be corrected, or maybe you can correct it yourself.
Yeah, I think that's good start. I'll review them later, but I think that's good as long as it's kind of consistent.
So is the contention then, though, once I start playing the video, I go to the next page, I've terminated that video. If I come back, now that's a different session?
Yeah. Unless the object holds that information.
Or actually, for that matter, by the definitions that's there, with an initiated statement and ends with a terminated statement. So even if I stay on the page, if I watch the video all the way through and then watch it again, that would be two different sessions. I'm not sure. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, if you are watching the video again on a separate launch.
Okay, but you're not talking about a separate launch.
If it is on let's say you are on the page, you watched the video and you went back and started from the beginning, you have not terminated the session.
Okay, but then that's talking about the page, which would be above the video. So we need to specify that. And actually, it wouldn't even be the page; it would be the whole course.
Basically,
or not course, the activity.
Basically, we might need to see what a terminated and abandoned is. So when we talk about terminated, we say that it is when a user ended an activity. So this can happen if a user closes the page, or it can happen when a user changes the page, or he clicks on a button that terminates that video session. It depends on the object or the JavaScript code that is handling the video. So if the I'm sorry for that. It's my daughter. She woke up.
Well, that's okay. I think we need to be really careful with that, because the term session ID already has at least 2, maybe 3 contexts already. Because there's the session ID there's a session ID at the transport layer. There's a session ID at the HTTP application layer, I think. That one may not be relevant. And then there's a session ID at the LMS application layer. Now we're talking about adding a 4th and possibly even a 5th. So I think we need to be really careful in how that's defined.
Yeah, so session starts when the initiated verb is sent. So as soon as the initiated verb goes in, the session starts. And as soon as it is terminated or abandoned, it ends. So if there is a known way to detect that the user has ended the activity, maybe by clicking on a button that ends the activity, or changing the page, or closing the page, manually clicking the cross on the page, or if it is on another device, there might be other ways to end the activity knowingly.
How is the session ID set?
Yeah, so that part I haven't written down yet. So it is the session ID value will be the UUID value, that is the statement ID value of the initiated statement.
That's the statement ID.
Is the intent that the session ID would be stored in the state API?
No. Session ID will be part of all the statements in that session.
I don't know. That's not going to happen. I mean, it may happen in some cases, but I guarantee most people will not do that, unless that's done at the LRS level. But if the value of the session ID has to be the UUID statement ID of the initiated statement.
So this session ID will be optional. If the object wants to send, it can send it, but it has to be this it has to be the statement ID. So the script has to generate a random UUID, and from the beginning, it has to send the UUID along with the statement. Technically, it is not a complicated job, but it is a part of what anyone implementing video profile will want to do.
But again, my concern is now I'm looking at the video profile, but you're telling me how to architect my entire course.
I didn't get that.
Well, where's the session ID coming from? Because again, this is what I mean. We have to be really careful, about the words we use, because again, this is what I was saying before. We've already got 3 sessions involved.
Okay,
so when you log into the LMS, when you start the course, that is a session.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's this session or not, that's to be determined.
But no, it is not this session.
Okay, so now, but again, now we have the problem of if I watch a video, I hit play, and I just let it play all the way through, and then I hit play again. Is that 2 sessions?
As long as the video is not terminated or abandoned, it is not 2 sessions. So,
but if I play it all the way to the end, it'll be completed.
Yeah, it'll be completed, but I don't know if it terminates the video. Completion should not terminate.
So unless it's your intention that every time we close the page, the video player sends a terminate, that definition isn't going to work. That's what I mean. Like,
yeah, if terminated is not sent, or even if maybe abandoned is not sent, because abandoned is also an optional statement. A new session starts as soon as a new initiated statement is sent. And initiated statement will be sent when a video is launched. So when a video is launched, the player object is generated, and it sends an initiated statement, and then every statement continues with that session ID.
So now the other concern I'm going to have, and this is why I think we need to be very careful about this, is every statement then around a video could end up with 2 session IDs, because it could have the session ID for the video and the session ID for the course itself.
You should not confuse it with any other session IDs. Session ID here is only for video and for the scope of video. It is not related to anything else. Now,
if I'm tracking this, but if I have the same thought at the course level of, okay, I want to track all statements relevant to the session of taking that course.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like this is, we have to look at this from all the angles.
Yeah. So if your course has some extra layer that adds session ID to the statements, let's say you are using CMI5, and CMI5 has a session ID in itself. Now, if you are using CMI5 and video is part of CMI5, and I don't know if it allows sending session ID as part of another activity, assuming that CMI5 allows adding session ID as part of other activities, that session ID might be part of the statement sent using this profile. Now, if you are doing that, that will have a uh, different ID for the session. This long URL you see, this URL will be different for that. So if you are talking about video session ID, you are not talking about course session ID, or you are not relating it with any other session in any other context. It is specifically and only for video. So if you are relating it with any other session, if you are talking about any other session, you want to see the course session, you should not look at this session ID. Now let me give you one example that might clear where this can be of help. Let's say you have a pretty dumb launching mechanism, and almost 100% of the launching mechanism will have this problem. Let's say a user launches this video in two separate tabs or two separate browsers. Now, two separate browsers have the same video running. For the same user, the actor ID is same, the video's activity ID is same, everything is same. Now, in this context, two different videos, two different versions of the same video are running, and both of them are sending the statements to the LRS. Now, if you try to recollect how the events happened, your reporting mechanism will get completely confused. Until and unless you have a mechanism to see which session is doing what. So let's say one play went from one of them and another play went from another of them, and let's say the other one paused it, you will not know which one paused the video. So those kind of issues can be handled if we have a session ID. Does it make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, you see the point I'm making too, is we have to be careful because the term session ID is already something that exists at multiple levels.
Yeah, so whenever session ID is there, it is for that specific context. If for example, if I'm using PHP, there is PHP session ID whenever you launch a page. So there is a session ID. If you start a PHP session, there will be there'll be a session for that page, even if you are not logging in. And yeah, so if there is a session ID or a session, it will be for specific context. So this is the link that Jason sent. It is regarding the SCORM, how SCORM profile is handling session. Jason, does it talk about session anywhere?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's if you do a search for session, you can see where it talks about it. It's all in the text there, but yeah, they're talking about attempts because SCORM has like a temporal model where you can limit the number of attempts on a SCO and things like that. So those are associated with a session, and it looks like in the SCORM profile, and I could get Tom to join us on a discussion if he wants to get into more detail. He's the one that's worked on it. It looks like the SCORM profile is just using context as well.
SCORM only exists during life of shareable content object. There is no SCORM API that exists outside of that communication system. So, do you know if this attempt ID is stored as in the state?
I think it's stored in the statement API from what I can tell. I wasn't sure. That's why I went and looked real quick, but
Okay. So basically you are um, indicating a termination means a new attempt, and a suspension means a new, sorry, same attempt, but the session, again, the session ID will change, right? Is there a session ID or only the attempt ID?
I don't know. Can find out though.
A new attempt ID for future sessions. So each launch, I would say, is a separate session, but multiple launches can be part of one attempt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you just group them together through context.
But Anthony, do you see like why there should be no confusion between sessions of different things? Like even here, if a video is part of a SCORM object, uh, there will be a separate session or session ID or attempt ID for the SCORM profile, and there will be a separate session ID for the video profile. So anyone reporting on the video will look at the session ID for video. Otherwise, they will not worry about session ID that video stores. It is a completely separate ID. You could name it XYZ. It doesn't mean it doesn't need to be named as session ID, but it is session ID because it is a session. So in context of video profile, so far what we have discussed and decided is that each attempt, as you say in the SCORM profile, will be registration in case of video. There is a separate registration parameter in the xAPI spec, which will indicate an attempt. There can be multiple launches for an attempt or registration. We haven't called a attempt anywhere, so it is a registration, or you can call it enrollment. There are multiple words for the same thing. So each registration can have multiple sessions. So each session is kind of a separate launch. And each launch will have a session ID, and registration will have a registration UUID. So this is the xAPI statement context. So registration is a property in the context of an xAPI statement, and it is generally referred to as an enrollment, as you say in a lot of the LMSs. Or in terms of SCORM profile, you can call it an attempt. So does it make sense? Anthony, are you there? Am I audible?
Sorry, I'm trying to multitask.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
Anyone else has any confusion related to this? I'm asking because this can be really confusing if you're not able to follow what I said. Okay, so I think we are over by 12 minutes, so we can end this discussion here and maybe meet next month to move ahead. I'll try to finish this off, and we can republish the vocabulary, updated vocabulary.
Yeah, it sounds good. Thanks for hosting this again, Pankaj, and I'll work with you offline on this vocabulary stuff, and also the Gitbook thing if you want.
Yeah, definitely.
Skype message or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you are free, you can just let me know, and I'll work with you.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks again for entertaining my questions. I just have one more in the chat there. Is it easy to find this recording?
Yeah, we have most of the recordings in the GitHub wiki. I haven't been able to update some of them, so you can see them. Last few videos I haven't been able to update, but I'll try to update as soon as possible.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for that. Makes it logical to post them there. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks everyone. Have a good day. See you next month.
Right,
Thank you.
Bye.